Captain Jiho sat in the command chair of the Horizon's edge and stared at the massive structure ahead. The threshold gates stretched across space like a silver wall, marking the border between empty darkness and the civilized galaxy beyond. For 300 years, humanity had watched the stars and dreamed of this moment. Now, after decades of building and testing, they were finally here. Jiho was 46 years old, with gray streaks in his dark hair. He had been a fighter pilot during Earth's last territorial war before becoming a test pilot for the new starships. The weight of representing 7 billion humans pressed on his shoulders like a physical thing. Every decision he made today would shape how the galaxy saw his entire species. Lieutenant. Yuna worked at the navigation console, her fingers dancing across holographic displays. She was only 28, but already the best navigator humanity had ever produced. She saw space differently than others. Where most people saw empty void, she saw currents and flows of gravity and energy. The ship moved through space like she was conducting music only she could hear. The communications panel beeped. A deep, rasping voice filled the bridge. "Unknown vessel, you have entered restricted space. This sector is protected by Galactic Assembly Authority. State your identity and purpose." On the main view screen, a massive warship appeared. It was 3 times the size of the Horizon's edge, with dark red armor plates and weapons that gleamed in the starlight. The ship belonged to the reptilian species that controlled this border zone. Jiho stood up from his chair and straightened his uniform. He nodded to the communications officer. "Open all frequencies. I want everyone to hear this." Dr. Minji, the ship's science officer, looked worried. She was 50 years old, with kind eyes, and had spent her whole life studying alien cultures from Earth's telescopes. "Captain, perhaps we should be more diplomatic. First contact protocols suggest protocols written by people who never left Earth," Jiho interrupted gently. "We need to show strength, not weakness." He faced the view screen and spoke clearly. "This is Captain Jiho of the United Nations Starfleet. We come in peace, but we come as equals. We request immediate audience with the Galactic Assembly." Silence filled the bridge. Then the reptilian voice returned, and it sounded amused. "Equals. You are a species we classified as primitive and violent. You have no standing here. Turn back or be destroyed." Sergeant Taiyang tensed at the security station. He was 32 years old. A decorated soldier with scars from the resource wars. His hand moved toward the weapons controls. "Captain, they're powering up their guns." Jiho raised his hand for calm. "Hold position." The alien commander appeared on screen. His scales were deep green with orange patterns, and his yellow eyes studied them with cold interest. "I am Commander Vexter of the Border Patrol. You humans are bold. I will grant you that. Perhaps too bold for your own survival." "We've survived worse than threats," Jiho replied. "We've survived ourselves." Vexter's mouth opened in what might have been a smile, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Have you? Very well. I will give you a chance to prove your species deserves consideration. Do you see the debris field ahead, beyond the gate?" Yuna pulled up a display. Between the threshold gate and open space lay a massive field of broken ships and twisted metal. Strange energy readings flickered through it like lightning. "I see it, Captain. Spatial anomalies throughout. The readings don't make sense. Gravity wells appearing and disappearing randomly. We call it the Maze of Thorns," Vexter explained. "Any species requesting entry to civilized space must navigate it. Most fail. Of the last 100 ships that attempted passage, only 7 survived. Navigate it successfully, and I will personally escort you to the assembly. Fail, and you join the debris." Dr. Minji gasped. "Captain, this is madness. We don't have data on those anomalies. We could be torn apart." Jiho looked at his crew. They were scared but determined. These were volunteers, the best humanity had. They knew the risks when they signed up. "Lieutenant Yuna, can you do it?" Yuna studied the readings, her eyes unfocused as she processed the data in her unique way. The debris field looked like chaos to others, but to her, patterns emerged. The gravity wells weren't random. They pulsed with rhythm. The energy spikes followed currents she could feel more than measure. "I can try," she said quietly, "but I'll need everyone's trust. No questioning my navigation orders. We'll need to move fast and make turns that seem wrong." "You have full control," Jiho confirmed. "Everyone else, prepare for extreme maneuvers. Strap in tight." The horizon's edge moved forward into the debris field. Immediately, a gravity well formed directly ahead. Yuna jerked the ship to port, missing it by meters. Alarms blared as the hull groaned under the stress. "Contact, right?" Taiyang called out. A piece of debris the size of a bus tumbled toward them. Yuna rolled the ship, and the debris passed overhead so close it scraped the shields. She accelerated forward, then suddenly reverse thrust. A massive gravity spike appeared exactly where they would have been. The ship bucked and shook, throwing people against their restraints. Dr. Minji gripped her console, her face pale. "How does she know where they'll appear?" "She doesn't know," Jiho said, watching Yuna work. "She feels it." For 20 minutes, the horizon's edge danced through the impossible maze. Yuna moved the ship with confidence that seemed insane, diving toward what looked like solid debris, only to find paths others couldn't see. She spun through gravity wells that appeared from nowhere, using their pull to sling the ship forward faster. Finally, they burst out the other side into clear space. The bridge erupted in cheers and relieved laughter. Taiyang checked his console and laughed in disbelief. "Captain, we crossed in 18 minutes. The previous record was 42. Commander Vexler's voice returned, and this time it held respect. "Impressive. I have not seen flying like that in my 30 years on this patrol. Perhaps you humans are more than simple warriors after all." Jiho allowed himself a small smile. "We're full of surprises." "Indeed. I will escort you to Centralis Prime as promised. The Assembly will see you, though I cannot promise they will welcome you." Vexler paused. "A word of advice, Captain. The galaxy has seen many species like yours. Most ended badly. Tread carefully." The channel closed. Jiho looked at his crew, his tired, scared, brilliant crew. They had passed the first test, but he knew Vexler was right. The hard part was just beginning. Through the view screen, the galaxy stretched before them. Millions of stars, thousands of civilizations, all watching to see what these newcomers would do. Jiho sat back in his command chair and thought about Earth, about all the people depending on them. Whatever happened next, the galaxy would remember this day. The day humanity arrived and refused to bow. The assembly hall was the largest structure Ambassador Hannah had ever seen. It hung in space around a dying white star, a massive sphere made of materials from 1,000 worlds. Inside, representatives from 847 species gathered to judge humanity's worth. Hannah was 62 years old with silver hair pulled back in a simple style. She wore a plain blue uniform with no decorations except a small earth pin on her collar. She had survived the resource wars as a young woman, watching her family die when the water reserves ran dry. Those memories never left her. They were why she fought so hard for humanity's future now. Captain Jiho stood beside her, along with Dr. Mingi and Sergeant Taiyang. They were the diplomatic team, chosen to represent all of Earth around them. The chamber filled with beings of every imaginable form. Some walked on legs, others floated on energy fields. Some breathed oxygen, others existed in sealed environment suits filled with toxic gases at the center of the hall.
7 beings sat elevated above all others.
These were the Council of Elders, representatives of the oldest and most powerful civilizations. The one in the middle glowed with soft blue light and had no solid form at all, in energy being from the Ethereal Confederacy. We will now hear the petition of Species Classification 773. Designation: Humanity. The energy being spoke directly into their minds. I am Prime Speaker, Lutzother. Humanity requests full membership in the Galactic Assembly. We will examine the evidence. Holographic displays filled the air. Images from Earth's history appeared: wars, bombings, genocide, environmental destruction. Every terrible thing humanity had ever done played out in painful detail. Hannah felt Taiyang tense beside her. The sergeant's hands clenched into fists as he watched soldiers killing other soldiers and footage from the wars he had fought in. This species destroys its own kind over resources, territory, and ideology, Lutzather continued. They poisoned their own world in pursuit of industrial advancement. They created weapons capable of destroying their entire planet. By what right do they request to join civilized space? Hannah stepped forward. She had known this moment would come. We don't deny our history. Every image you've shown is true. Humans have committed terrible acts. Then you admit you are too dangerous, another elder said. This one resembled a massive insect with crystal wings. No, Hannah said firmly. I admit we made mistakes and learned from them. Show them the rest of our history. Dr. Minji activated her own display. New images appeared. Humans helping each other after disasters, building hospitals, creating art and music, writing philosophy about peace and justice. The first moon landing. The Mars colonies. The moment humanity set aside all weapons and united to build the starship that brought them here. We are not proud of our violent past, Hannah continued, but we are proud of how we changed. How many species here can say they overcame their nature through choice rather than force? Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some species agreed, others protested loudly. A small, insect-like being in the back suddenly spoke up. I propose a test. Let humanity prove their worth with action rather than words. The elders conferred silently. Prime Speaker Lutzather turned to the small being. Explain, Representative Tikur of the Clix Hive. The void crisis in the Outer Rim. We have lost 17 ships trying to seal that dimensional rift. Let the humans try. If they succeed, they have proven their value. If they fail, the problem solves itself. Dark laughter rippled through the chamber. Hannah felt cold. She knew about the void crisis from briefings. The rift was tearing holes in reality itself, spawning creatures that consumed everything in their path. Dozens of worlds had been evacuated. Harsh test, Lutzather said, but fair. Humanity, you have 1 month to close the rift. Success grants you membership. Failure means you return to Earth and never leave your system again. Do you accept? Hannah looked at Jiho. The captain's face was grim, but he nodded slightly. They had no choice. Refusing would end humanity's dream of joining the stars. We accept, Hannah said. 3 weeks later, Captain Jiho stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge, leading a small fleet toward the Vero sector. 4 other human ships followed him, along with observer vessels from 6 alien species. They wanted to watch humanity fail. Approaching the rift zone, Lieutenant Yuna reported. Her voice was tight with tension. Ahead of them, space itself looked wounded. A massive tear in reality pulsed with purple and black energy. Strange shapes moved within it, things that hurt to look at directly. Commander Vexther's voice came through from his ship, which had volunteered to observe. Captain Jiho, I must advise against approaching closer. That rift has destroyed everything that entered it. Then it's lucky we're not entering it, Jiho replied. He turned to Dr. Minji. Ready? Dr. Minji checked her readings one last time. The plan was insane. Use the rift's own energy against itself, creating a cascade that would collapse it from within. The mathematics barely worked. One wrong calculation would destroy them all. As ready as we'll ever be, all ships, take your positions, Jiho ordered. The 5 human ships spread out in a precise formation around the rift. Each ship began emitting a specific frequency of energy tuned to resonate with the rift's own signature. On other ships, this had caused catastrophic failures. But humans calculated differently. They understood chaos theory and probability in ways more logical species didn't. Resonance building, Yuna reported, 20%, 40%. The rift pulsed violently. Creatures began pouring out dark shapes that seemed to be made of nothing and everything at once. They rushed toward the human ships. Defensive fire, Taiyang commanded. Weapons blazed across all 5 ships, cutting down the creatures. But more kept coming. Hold formation, Jiho shouted. We're almost there. 70% resonance, Una called out. Shield strength dropping on all ships. Hull breaches on the Unity. Dr. Minji's hands flew across her console, making micro-adjustments to the energy frequencies. Sweat dripped down her face. We need 30 more seconds. Those 30 seconds felt like hours. The alien observers watched in shock as human ships, battered and breaking, held their positions with absolute discipline. No ship broke formation to save itself. No captain abandoned the mission. Resonance at 90%. Una shouted. Critical threshold achieved. All ships. Full reverse. Jiho commanded now. The 5 human ships fired their engines at maximum power, pulling away from the rift. The resonance they had created reached critical mass. The rift began to collapse inward, feeding on its own energy. The creatures screamed sounds that came through hull plating and inside mines. As they were pulled back into the dying portal, with a flash of light that blinded sensors, the rift collapsed completely. Where there had been a tear in reality, now there was only normal space. Silence filled the communication channels. Then Tikura's voice came through, filled with something like awe. They did it. Humans actually did it. Vexter laughed a deep, rumbling sound. I told you they were full of surprises. Back at the assembly hall, the vote was unanimous. Humanity was granted full membership. But as celebrations spread across Earth and human colonies, ancient beings in the shadows watched with concern. The conclave of First Ones had seen species like this before. They had seen where it led. And they began making plans. Commander Doyon had been in space for 6 months when he found the ghost ships. He was 38 years old, captain of the Uns Defiant, and had spent the last 2 years helping humanity establish their new role in the galaxy. This patrol through the Ishara Nebula was supposed to be routine. Nothing about it felt routine now. Captain, I'm reading 15 derelict vessels, his sensor officer reported. Multiple species, all recent abandonment within the last week. Doyon studied the display. Ships from different civilizations floated dead in space. No damage, no signs of battle, just empty hulls drifting through the nebula's colorful clouds. Any life signs? None. It's like everyone just ... disappeared. A chill ran down Doyon's spine. He had fought in the resource wars on Earth, had seen terrible things. But this was different. This was wrong in a way he couldn't explain. Secure one of the vessels. I want a boarding team ready. 20 minutes later, Doyon stood inside an alien ship with Sergeant Taiyang and 4 Marines. The vessel belonged to a species called the Rothani Peaceful Traders, known across the galaxy. The interior was intact. Food still sat on tables. Personal items lay scattered around quarters, but no crew. No bodies. Nothing. It's like they vanished in the middle of their daily routine, Taiyang said quietly. The hardened soldier looked disturbed. No signs of struggle. No panic. Just ... gone. ... Doyon sent all the data back to Earth and to Dr. Minji at the Human Research Institute on Centralus Prime. 2 days later, she called an emergency meeting with Ambassador Hannah and Admiral Jiho. The captain, who had been promoted after his success at closing the rift, Dr. Mingi looked exhausted. She had been awake for 48 hours straight, comparing data from a dozen sources. I found a pattern, she said, bringing up a massive star chart. Every 50,000 years, advanced civilizations vanish without a trace. The records are buried deep in galactic archives, classified and forgotten. But it's happened at least 7 times before. What causes it? Hannah asked. The ambassador was now 63 and feeling every year of it. Recent events had aged her. That's what terrifies me, Minji replied. No one knows because there are never survivors to tell the story. Admiral Jiho studied the data with his sharp tactical mind. He looked older than his 48 years now, gray hair and lines on his face deepening. When is the next cycle? Minji's hand shook slightly. We're in it. Started about 3 months ago. Before anyone could respond, the lights in the room dimmed. A presence appeared in the center of the chamber, not walking in, simply existing where nothing had been before. It was a being of pure light that hurt to look at directly, ancient, beyond measure. I am eternal watcher of the conclave of First Ones. The being spoke without sound, directly into their minds. I come with a message for humanity. Hannah stood, fighting the urge to run. Every instinct screamed in danger. What message? You have attracted our attention. This is not a blessing. Images flooded their minds, galaxies being born and dying, civilizations rising and falling like waves on an ocean. We are the gardeners of this galaxy. We prune species that grow to dangerous. Every 50,000 years, we harvest those who threaten the balance. The missing ships, Jiho said, understanding dawning. You took them? Civilizations that reach a certain level of advancement inevitably destroy themselves or others. We prevent this by offering Ascension a peaceful transformation that removes violent impulses. Those who refuse are eliminated. You're talking about genocide, Hannah said, anger overcoming her fear. You're talking about wiping out entire species. You're talking about survival, Eternal Watcher replied. The alternative is a galactic war that destroys all life. We have seen it happen. We prevent it. And you think we need to be pruned? Minji asked. Humanity displays concerning traits. You solve problems other species cannot. You adapt rapidly. You inspire change in cultures that have been stable for millions of years. This is dangerous, or it's exactly what the galaxy needs, Jiho countered. Maybe your old ways aren't working anymore. Eternal Watcher pulsed with what might have been surprise or anger. You dare challenge us? We have existed since before your son was born. Then you should know better than to commit mass murder, Hannah said firmly. Give us a chance to prove you wrong. Very well. We offer you a test. The being created another image in their minds, a barren system on the edge of known space. In the Tartarus system, we have created a pocket universe. You will send representatives inside. They will experience compressed time. Centuries will pass for them, while only weeks pass here. We will watch how humanity behaves when faced with scarcity, abundance, external threat, and internal conflict. If you prove capable of long-term peace, we will reconsider. If not, your species will be ascended or eliminated. The being vanished as suddenly as it appeared. The three humans stood in shocked silence. This is insane, Minji whispered. They want us to live entire lifetimes in a simulation. Not a simulation, Jiho corrected. A pocket universe. Real consequences, real deaths, just compressed time. He looked at Hannah. I volunteer to lead the expedition. Jiho, you'll live for centuries in there, Hannah protested. You'll age. You might die of old age before it ends, and I'll die proving humanity deserves to survive. He smiled grimly. Besides, someone needs to make sure we don't destroy ourselves when things get hard. I'm good at that. They assembled a team of 1,000 volunteers. Scientists, engineers, farmers, artists, teachers, a complete cross-section of humanity. Lieutenant Yuna volunteered despite her growing headaches. The rift she had helped close had changed something in her brain. She saw things others couldn't now, glimpses of dimensions beyond normal reality. A young engineer named Salmon joined the team. She was only 24, but brilliant, full of hope and idealism about humanity's future. They entered the pocket universe in specially designed habitation modules. For the outside world, 3 weeks passed. For those inside, 500 years of experience compressed into that time. The simulation tested them ruthlessly. In the first century, paradise turned to scarcity. Some advocated taking resources by force. Jiho, aging but still sharp, helped create fair distribution systems instead. In the second century, they faced simulated alien attacks. Humanity defended itself but refused to genocide the attackers. They captured them, studied them, eventually found ways to communicate and coexist. The third century brought abundance. Many civilizations, given plenty, had collapsed into hedonism and stagnation. Humans built universities, art galleries, and research centers. They used their comfort to create rather than consume. The fourth century brought their greatest challenge: internal division. Factions formed with different philosophies. Some wanted to return to old hierarchies. Others pushed for complete individual freedom with no rules. Salman, now elderly but wise, developed a framework that balanced individual rights with community needs. Violence was prevented through dialogue and compromise. The 5th century offered something no other species had been given the chance to transcend, to become energy beings like the first ones themselves. They refused. Being human meant being flawed, mortal, and together. They chose community over Gouda when the 3 weeks ended and the team emerged from the pocket universe. Only days had passed outside. Admiral Jiho stepped out looking ancient, 80 years old from life inside the compressed time. His hair was white, his body frail, but his eyes were bright. Eternal Watcher appeared again before the assembly. Your performance was unprecedented. Every other species either descended into violence or chose individual transcendence. You chose cooperation and community. Does this mean we pass? Hannah asked. It means you have proven more complex than anticipated. We withdraw our immediate judgment. The being paused. But I warn you, something worse is coming. The disappearances were not only our harvest. Something else is taking ships. Something even we fear. The void crisis you closed was not natural. It was a probe, a scout, for something greater. Eternal Watcher vanished. The assembly erupted into chaos. Alien delegates demanded answers, but no one had any. Jiho, aged far beyond his years, looked at Hannah with tired eyes. We survived the test. But the real challenge hasn't even started yet. Through the great windows of the assembly hall, space looked peaceful and calm. But somewhere in the darkness between stars, something ancient stirred. Something hungry, and it was coming for them all. The outer rim went silent on a Tuesday. 40 star systems stopped transmitting at exactly the same moment. Admiral Jiho, now looking like a man of 70, despite being only 50 in real years, stared at the display showing the dead zone. The experience in the pocket universe had aged his body decades beyond normal. Doctors said he had maybe 5 years left, 10 if he was lucky. Send scout ships to investigate, he ordered. His voice was still strong, even if his body wasn't. Fast ships only. If they encounter anything, they run immediately. The scouts returned 3 days later with footage that made the entire assembly hall fall silent. Planet stripped completely bare. Not destroyed, cleaned. Every building gone, every machine, every organic molecule removed, down to bedrock. 40 worlds reduced to lifeless stone spheres. What could do this? Ambassador Hannah asked. She stood beside Jiho in the assembly, her own gray hair now completely white. Together, they had fought for humanity's place among the stars. Now they faced something neither understood. Dr. Mingy brought up analysis from the science teams. The planets weren't attacked. They were harvested, like farmers harvesting a field. Something came, took everything of value, and moved on. The harvesters, a voice said from the shadows. Eternal Watcher appeared, the ancient being of light that represented the first ones. For the first time, the being seemed uncertain. We hoped they would not find this galaxy for another 1,000,000 years. We were wrong. Explain, Jiho demanded. What are these harvesters? Beings from a dying universe? They consume other realities to sustain their own. They exist partially outside normal space, making them nearly impossible to fight. They don't communicate. They don't negotiate. They simply consume and move on. Across the galaxy, panic spread. Species that had existed peacefully for millions of years began evacuating to distant galaxies. Some tried to hide, others prepared to fight. The Ethereal Confederacy attempted mass ascension to pure energy forms, hoping to escape notice. The harvesters consumed them first, feeding on their energy like flames eating paper. The Galactic Assembly fractured, every species for themselves. The alliance that had held for eons collapsed in days. Can't fight them conventionally, Commander Eunice said during an emergency meeting of human leadership. She looked tired, her eyes unfocused. The headaches had gotten worse since the Rift incident. Sometimes she saw things that were there but in different dimensions. They exist in multiple dimensions at once. Weapons that work in our reality pass right through them, and we make weapons that work in their reality, Engineer Solomon suggested. She was now 26. having volunteered for the Military Engineering Corps after humanity's acceptance into the assembly. She had bright ideas and endless energy. Dr. Mingy looked doubtful. We barely understand standard three-dimensional physics. How can we fight in dimensions we can't even perceive? Una spoke quietly. I can perceive them. Since the rift, I've seen ... fragments, pieces of higher dimensions bleeding through. It's killing me slowly, but I can see where the harvesters exist. Geo made a decision that hurt his soul. Then we use what we have. Una becomes our eyes into higher dimensions. Salmon and Mingy develop weapons based on what she sees. And we do something the galaxy has never seen before. What's that? Hannah asked. We attack first. The strategy was insane by galactic standards. Every other species either fled or fortified their positions, waiting for the inevitable. Humanity proposed to take 80% of their entire fleet, nearly everything they had, and strike at the Harvester fleet directly. You'll be destroyed, Vexther protested. The reptilian commander had become an unlikely ally and friend to humanity. They've consumed 40 systems in 3 weeks. Nothing can stop them. Nothing has tried stopping them, Jiho countered. Everyone just waits to die or runs away. Maybe that's why they keep winning. Ambassador Hannah worked diplomatic miracles, convincing 7 species to join the attack. The Click's hive sent their warriors. Vexther brought his Dominion's warships. 5 other species contributed vessels. In total, 147 ships gathered for an attack everyone thought was suicide. On the flagship Un's Defiant, Commander Doyon coordinated the fleet. At 40 now, he had become one of humanity's best tactical minds. All ships report ready, Admiral. Jiho nodded from his command chair. His body was failing faster now. Doctors had him on stimulants just to stay alert, but his mind remained sharp. Commander Una, guide us to their location. Una sat at a special navigation station, her head covered with sensors that monitored her unusual brain patterns. She closed her eyes and reached out with senses humans weren't supposed to have. They're in the Carvax Nebula. I can see them. Hundreds of ships, feeding on energy from the nebula itself, and that's where we go, Jiho said. All ships, jump on my mark. The combined fleet entered the Carvax Nebula together. The nebula was beautiful, clouds of purple and blue gas, lit from within by newborn stars. In the center they found the harvesters. The enemy ships looked organic, like massive creatures made of darkness and thorns. They pulsed with stolen energy, feeding continuously. When they noticed the approaching fleet, they didn't retreat. They attacked. They're phasing in and out of our dimension. Doyon shouted. Weapons aren't landing hits. All human ships activate threshold drives, Jiho ordered. This was the secret weapon. Soman and Minji had developed engines that could shift ships partially into higher dimensions, based on Una's visions, match their phase. Human ships shimmered and seemed to become translucent. Suddenly, their weapons found targets. Harvester vessels burned when hit, their shields useless against attacks from multiple dimensions. It's working. Vexter's voice came through, filled with amazement. Your ships are hurting them. All ships converge on the flagship. Jiho commanded. Doyen, prepare the boarding teams. This was the riskiest part. Colonel Taiyang, now 42 and covered in scars from a dozen battles, led 500 Marines in boarding craft toward the largest harvester vessel. They had to plant a dimensional bomb inside the mothership, a device that would collapse the harvesters' connection to this dimension. The boarding was brutal. Harvester ships were nightmares inside corridors that existed in multiple spaces at once. Gravity that changed randomly. Defenders that could strike from angles that shouldn't exist. Taiyang lost half his force in the first 10 minutes. But humans were stubborn. They adapted to the impossible geometry. They learned to predict the unpredictable. They fought through horror that drove some soldiers mad and kept pushing forward.
Yes.
Bomb planted, Taiyang reported, his voice strained. Extracting now. All ships fall back. Jiho ordered. Maximum speed. The fleet retreated as the dimensional bomb armed. Una guided them through the nebulous hazards, her nose bleeding from the mental strain. Behind them, The Harvester mothership began to glow with impossible colors. Detonation in 10 seconds, Dr. Minji counted down. 5, 4. 3. A bomb exploded in dimensions humans couldn't see, and a few they could. Reality itself seemed to tear open and then seal shut. The Harvester mothership and everything near it simply ceased to exist. The dimensional rift they used to enter this universe collapsed, trapping the remaining Harvesters in normal space where they were vulnerable. The combined fleet turned and attacked. Without their dimensional phasing, Harvesters died like any other enemy. Within an hour, the battle was won, but the cost was terrible. 82 ships destroyed. 40,000 crew dead. Commander Yuna collapsed at her station, her brain damaged beyond repair by the strain of seeing higher dimensions. She fell into a coma she would never wake from. Admiral Jiho watched from his command chair as medical teams carried Yuna away. They had won a great victory. They had proven humans could fight the impossible and win. But the price felt too high. In the weeks after, the galaxy celebrated. Humanity had saved them all. But Jiho knew the truth. They had only closed one door. The Harvesters would find another way in, eventually. And in her last conscious moments, Yuna had whispered something that haunted him. They're not the only ones coming. Admiral Jiho sat in his apartment on Earth and watched the sunset over the Pacific Ocean. 5 years had passed since the battle against the Harvesters. He was technically 55 years old, but his body was that of a man in his 80s. The pocket universe experience and constant stress had destroyed him from inside. Doctors said he had weeks left, maybe a month. From his window, he could see the changes humanity had brought to the galaxy. Human music played in alien cities. Alien children played human sports. The concept of individual choice had spread to species that had lived in strict hierarchies for millions of years. Humanity wasn't just a member of the galactic community. They had transformed it. But not everyone was happy about that. The Purity Front had formed 2 years ago. A coalition of species that believed humanity was a cultural disease. They argued that human ideas about individual rights, competitive sports, artistic freedom, and democratic choice were destroying ancient traditions. Led by the mysterious Obsidian Throne Imperium, they demanded humanity be expelled from the Assembly or contained back on Earth. Ambassador Hannah, 68 and walking with a cane, had fought them at every turn. But even she was tired. 40 years of diplomatic battles had worn her down. She wanted to go home to Korea, to rest, to see the mountains one last time before she died. The Galactic Assembly had called a final vote. Would humanity remain a member species? Hannah stood before the assembly hall one last time. The chamber was packed, tensions running high. Species that had been allies for eons now shouted at each other. The unity humanity had inspired had also created division. I've been fighting for humanity's place here for almost 10 years, Hannah began, her voice still strong, despite her aged body. I've made arguments about our worth, our contributions, our victories. But today I won't do that. The chamber fell silent, surprised. Today, I propose we let those we help decide our fate. 7 species fought beside us against the Harvesters. Let them judge whether we deserve to stay. Council of Elders conferred quickly and agreed. A special tribunal formed, the Clix Hive, Vexther's Dominion, and 5 other species that had shed blood alongside humans. But before the tribunal could begin, something unexpected happened. Commander Yuna woke from her coma. She had been unconscious for 5 years, her brain damaged by exposure to higher dimensions. Doctors said she would never wake. But one morning, her eyes simply opened. When she spoke, her words confused everyone. The universe is dying, she said to Dr. Minji, who rushed to her bedside. I saw it. Entropy is accelerating. In 10,000 years, all stars will fade. Everything will freeze and die. Minji called an emergency meeting. Yuna, weak but determined, addressed the assembly through hologram. The Harvesters weren't evil. They were desperate. Their universe was dying, so they came to ours. But ours is dying too, just slower. Eternal Watcher appeared, the ancient first one. We have known this for eons. Why do you think we've been so careful about which species we allow to advance? We've been searching for a solution for millions of years. Every species that reaches a certain level either destroys themselves or becomes like the harvesters. Neither option saves the universe. So you've been waiting for something different, Jiho said, from Earth. His image projected into the assembly. He looked like a skeleton held together by will alone. You've been waiting for a species that thinks differently enough to solve the unsolvable. Yes, Eternal Watcher admitted. Your species has shown unprecedented creativity in problem-solving. You see patterns others miss. But we're not certain it's enough. A young human officer stood up in the chamber. Captain Hagen was 30 years old, one of Jiho's protégés. He represented the new generation of humanity born among the stars, raised with aliens as friends and neighbors. Then test us again. Let us try to find a solution. The research will take millennia, Eternal Watcher warned. It will require cooperation between species on a level never achieved. It will demand sacrifice and dedication across countless generations. Then we better start now, Hagen replied simply. Before the first ones could respond, the tribunal delivered their judgment. Vexther spoke for them all. We have considered humanity's impact on the galaxy. They have been disruptive, chaotic, and uncomfortable to work with. They challenge our oldest traditions and question our most sacred beliefs. Hannah closed her eyes, preparing for rejection. And they are absolutely necessary, Vexther continued. Without them, we would still be hiding from the harvesters or fleeing to distant galaxies. Without them, we would never have known our universe was dying. Without them, we would have no hope of survival. We vote for permanent membership and recommend humanity for the Defense Council. The Purity Front walked out in protest. A new division formed in the assembly, those willing to accept change and those clinging to old ways. But the vote passed. Humanity would stay. Ambassador Hannah accepted both the tribunal's decision and the first one's research invitation. Humanity would remain in the assembly and send volunteers to join the research project seeking to save reality itself. Captain Achan was promoted to lead the research vessel. His crew was mixed humans and aliens working together on the ultimate challenge. Engineer Soman, now 31, joined as Chief of Technical Operations, and Commander Yuna, despite her damaged body, volunteered as navigator. Her ability to perceive higher dimensions was essential to understanding the problem. Admiral Jiho watched the research ship launch from his deathbed on Earth. The vessel was beautiful. Built with technology from 100 species, it would travel to the edge of the universe itself, seeking answers to questions no one had ever thought to ask. Did we do it? He asked Dr. Minji, who sat beside him. Did we prove we deserved to be here? Mingi smiled through her tears. She was 60 now, her old friend dying in front of her. You did more than that. You changed what deserve means. You taught the galaxy that being flawed doesn't mean being worthless, that making mistakes is part of growing. That hope isn't foolish, it's brave. Jiho closed his eyes. The unforeseen, he whispered. They expected us to be warriors or conquerors. Instead, we became friends, Mingi finished. You became friends to a galaxy that forgot what friendship meant. Admiral Jiho died peacefully that night, his last thoughts of the stars. Across the galaxy, flags lowered in respect. Even the Purity Front paused their protests. Whatever else humanity had been, they had been brave. Years turned to decades. The research vessels sent back reports of fascinating discoveries. They found that entropy could be slowed through careful manipulation of higher dimensional forces. It wouldn't save the universe permanently, but it might buy time millions of years to find a permanent solution. More importantly, they discovered something the first ones had missed. The solution to entropy wasn't in transcending reality or fighting it. It was in accepting change itself. The universe was meant to evolve, to transform. Fighting that transformation only made things worse. Humanity's cultural contamination. The galaxy wasn't chaos, it was evolution in action. Species learning from each other, adapting, growing together. The galaxy had been static for too long. Humanity reminded everyone that change was natural and necessary. 1,000 years later, a historian stood before a memorial on Centralus Prime. She was neither fully human nor fully alien, but something new, child of the merged cultures that now populated the galaxy. Her name was Isil, a traditional Korean name passed down through generations as a reminder of humanity's origins. The memorial honored the moment the UN's horizon's edge crossed the threshold gate and demanded to be treated as equals. The inscription read, "They arrived unexpected. They fought when needed. They taught what others forgot. They reminded the galaxy that the future isn't written, it's chosen." Isil turned to the stars. Up there, 1,000 cultures, influenced by human ideas yet unique and beautiful, built their tomorrows together. The Purity Front still existed but had become a minority voice. Most species had embraced change, understanding that adaptation was survival. The research into saving the universe continued. Progress was slow, measured in centuries rather than years, but it continued with hope rather than desperation. Teams of mixed species worked side by side, bringing different perspectives to impossible problems. Earth remained special, but not isolated. Humans lived throughout the galaxy, and aliens lived on Earth. The boundaries between species blurred not through force, but through friendship and family. Children were born who had parents from different worlds, creating something entirely new. The first ones, ancient beyond measure, watched all this with something like wonder. They had existed for billions of years, had seen galaxies born and die, but they had never seen anything quite like this, a young, flawed species that changed the rules simply by refusing to accept that the rules couldn't change. Isil placed flowers at the memorial and smiled. The story of humanity's arrival had become legend, told on 1,000 worlds in 1,000 different ways. Some versions made humans into heroes, others into tricksters, others into lucky fools who stumbled into greatness. But all versions agreed on one thing: when the human Starfleet arrived, the galaxy watched the unforeseen unfold. Not conquest, not apocalypse, but something far more powerful and far more dangerous to the old order.